Angular's filters provide a nice way for users to drill down to exactly what they're looking for, and what's great is that our data updates in real time. We'll see how to apply filters to our classifieds in this lecture. Alright, so we've got all the pieces of CRUD going for our app. We can create and read and update and delete data. It'd be really good though if we gave the user some way to filter through or search for data. Any kind of app that's going to have listings like this is going to need some way to have the user search for what they want. So we can do this by making use of filters on the ng repeat within our app. And I'm thinking what we can do maybe is put a button up here beside the new classified button that opens up a filter area up here. So let's put that in. Let's go over to our view and let's go to our toolbar and just copy over this button. We'll just call it filters. And then we can change out this icon here, maybe for a magnifying glass. That's kind of the typical icon you get for searching. So magnify. And then we're going to get rid of this open sidebar method here. Here we'll actually say that we want to set the show filters property to true. So our filters area, let's come down here and put it in. Let's do a div with a class of filters. And then we'll do some flexbox layouts here. We'll say layout equals row to get everything horizontally. And then let's maybe center everything. And we can center everything if we do layout equals center, center. All right, and like we said, we want to conditionally show this area. And we can do that with ng-show. So ng-show is going to be the show filters property. Whenever show filters is true, this area will be displayed. So then within here, let's do an md input container. And in that input container, we're going to have our filters input boxes. So the first one should get a label that says enter search term. And then this will be an input here with a type of text. And then let's attach an ng model here. Ng model will be equal to classifieds filter. And that's going to give us a way to make use of this input box later on. It's going to be bound now to this classifieds filter property. And just before we go further, let's check this out to make sure everything's working. So we've got our filters button. If we click that, we get our filter showing up there. It's not quite centered the way that I was expecting it. Let's check this out. And okay, it's layout align that we need. So let's refresh. And there it is, it's in the center. And so nothing's actually happening at the moment for any kind of filtering, but that's because we need to attach our classifieds filter property to our ng repeat. Anytime we repeat over a list of data, an array of data, we can filter through it by attaching a filter like such. We just have to provide the pipe character and then filter. In this case, it's going to be classifieds filter that we want to use. So let's check this out now. If we click our filter, let's try jacket. And there you go. You see that the screen updates immediately with whichever data we're trying to filter. We can take another look at maybe trailer, and there it is. And the cool thing here too is that it's not just the data that's being displayed on the screen that we can filter by, it's any property within the data that makes up a given classified. So for example, if we wanted to go by a category, which we're not displaying, say vehicles, we see there that we get our vehicles showing up. Okay, so this is a good way to search based on a term that the user provides, but maybe we can also provide something like a drop-down list for a list of categories. And so let's take a look over here at Angular Material, and here they provide a select drop-down. And so let's use this in our view. Now let's go back over to our template, and we'll actually copy all of this and just change up a few things. So let's copy this in, and the label is category. And instead of an input here, what we actually want is an MD select. Within that MD select, we need to provide an MD option. So what we'll want is to repeat over a collection of our categories. So let's do this. Let's say we want to repeat over a category in categories, which we haven't set up yet. We will do that in a second, but we want to eventually have this categories array that we'll iterate over, and we want the value of each of these options to be equal to the category itself. We are just going to be passing through in this array the category names, so we'll template out the category into our value attribute there, and then we'll also template out here the category so that we can see it in the list. So let's bump this down just for spacing purposes. And now let's think about how we will get this list of categories through in our array. So we want to go over here to our controller, And right away, we kind of know that we're going to want to have something like scope categories is equal to our array of categories. Now, how do we grab these? Well, let's remember that in our classifieds JSON file, we've got a list of data, and in each of these objects, we've got a property for our categories that is itself an array of categories. Now, if we just tried to iterate through and grab access to all of these categories, what we'd find is that we'd have a bunch of repeats. We've got vehicles showing up here, but we've also got vehicles showing up down here in ID number 6 as well. So instead, what we'll want is some way to aggregate these together and just take the unique categories. And we could write some JavaScript to do this, and it wouldn't take too long, but let's actually make use of a library called Lodash. And so maybe you've heard of Lodash before. If you haven't, it's a library that's got a bunch of helper functions for JavaScript that makes it easier to kind of go over arrays and objects and do things like pull out unique values or map or reduce arrays. For now, we just want to use the unique function. So to do this, let's grab Lodash from the CDN. So we can go to cdnjs.com and let's search for Lodash. Here it is, lodash.js. Let's copy the link, and then let's go over here to our template, and then down here at the bottom, let's paste that in as a script reference. All right, so now we've got access to Lodash. We can use it in our controller. So back over here in our controller, what we'll want to do is set up a function to handle aggregating all of the categories. So let's do a function down here, and let's call this function getCategories. And this function will take an array of data that will just so happen to be our classifieds data. And so within this function, what we want to do is we want to say, let's have an empty array. And this is going to be an array called categories. We'll set that up as an empty array. And then we need to loop over this data that we're getting. Remember, this data is going to be this array of objects. So we are going to start by looping over that array. And we can use Angular's built-in helpers for this. We can use the helper called forEach, which is a helper function that lets us iterate over arrays. So let's say for each item in the classifieds that we've just been passed through our function, we want to take an item. And so this callback here, this function is going to give us access to each item in the iteration. And so now what we'll need to do is actually provide another loop. And the reason is that we've got our initial array, which is this array that starts here and ends down here. But then within each of these objects in the array, we've got another array, which is our categories. So back over here, let's do another for each loop. So we'll say Angular for each. And this time it's item.categories. And then within the callback that we get here, we can grab the category itself. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. We're taking our list of data, which is through classifieds here, iterating over it, grabbing the item from it, and then with that item, we can grab the categories off of it, which is the categories array in each of our objects. All right, so finally down here, what we want to do is we want to say categories push our category. And this category here comes from the callback right here, and that's going to be each and every individual category from each and every array within our data. But we're not quite done yet. What we want is to actually only return a unique set of categories, because as it stands, we would get repeats. Our categories array up here would be all of the categories in all of our data, and we just want the unique ones. And that's where Lodash comes in. So let's say here we want to return Lodash's unique function that is run on our categories. So our categories array, which gets populated by these loops, will be provided to the unique function, and that unique function will just return all of the unique categories. So we've got our getCategories function, and now let's actually make use of this to populate our categories array. So right now we just have it pointing to an empty array, and what we'll actually want to do is say getCategories, and we want to pass in our scope.classifieds data. All right, so let's save that and let's check it out to see if it works. So coming back over here, if we do our filters, we get our category dropdown and we don't get anything showing up. And so the issue here is that our classifieds factory is fetching all of our data. And then when that is complete, scope.classifieds is populated with that returned data. Now this is where we can see the asynchronous JavaScript issue coming in. Because this getClassifieds method, which we set up through our classifieds factory, is an asynchronous operation, this is not necessarily going to be complete by the time we get down lower in our script. And so what's happening is this is being run and scope.classifieds is being populated when the request finishes, but we've already gone to the next lines before that happens. And so when the page loads, it sends this request, and the request is resolved here in a fraction of a second. However, what happens faster is we try to assign something to scope.categories. And this will be empty, this scope.classifieds here will be empty until this gets resolved in the then method. So the way that we fix this is we just grab our array, and let's cut that out, and we'll place it up here beneath our initial assignment to scope.classifieds. So let's save this, and now let's check this out to see if it works. All right, so our categories dropdown now has all of our categories. However, if we click one of them, we don't get any kind of filtering going on yet. So what we need to do is add this filter to our ngRepeat. So let's go back over here to our template and let's find our ngRepeat for our classifieds. And what we can do is just pass another filter in. Just for the sake of space, I'm going to bump this down here. And what we'll do is provide another pipe character and we'll provide another filter. And in this case, you'll remember that our model that we used up here, ngModel, is going to be called category. So let's use category down here. So filter down here is going to be set to category. And so now what we've got is we've got two filters running on our repeated data. So let's head back over and we'll check this out again. If we go to parts and accessories, you see we get everything within that category. And then if we go to, say, furniture, we get everything in that category. Okay, so the last thing that we'll want to do is provide some way to clear these items. So if we've got some kind of search going on, like we've got a search for a mattress and then in the category of furniture, well, until the user refreshes the page, there's no way to actually clear those out and just return to our initial state. So let's do that now, and we can do that easily with a button. So let's head back over to our template. And right up in here, beside our category options, let's put in another container. We'll do a copy of this. Maybe we'll just grab all this and copy it out. And this will have a button inside. So we can actually get rid of this. And we'll call for an MD button here. And this button is going to just say clear. We can give this a class of MD_worn, which is going to be a red color on the button. And let's say that when this gets clicked, we'll just clear out the models that we have, category here and classifieds filter here. So ngClick. What will happen then is classifieds filter will be set to an empty string. And then also we'll set our category to be empty as well. All right, so we'll also just bump this down so that we can see it a bit better. All right, perfect. Let's test this out. So let's come over here, and if we open filters, we get our clear button showing up. So if we were to search for something like trailer, we could clear it out, and then we get everything back. Or if we had a category, if we picked parts and accessories, we could clear that as well. And you'll see here that the button is showing up a little bit high. It's not quite aligned with everything else. We can fix that pretty easily. Let's go over here. And instead of MD input container here, let's just call this a div and we'll give it a layout of row. And then we can make the adjustment down here as well. And let's check this out. All right, so now our button is aligned with our other items. Now you'll notice anytime we go to change our category, or if we type something in to filter our data further, the data gets redisplayed really quickly. And so to me, this is somewhere we can improve the user experience if we provided some animation. So what we'll want is for some animation to take place when our data gets redisplayed. And we'll do that in the next lesson.